During the Trojan War, Homer recounted the tales of numerous courageous figures whose legacies would endure through time. Among them, Agamemnon, the formidable leader and king of Mycenae, emerged more renowned than even Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, or Diomedes. As the son of Atreus, he was the only man capable of uniting all the Greek chieftains to embark on the far-reaching campaign in honor of Helen. For 10 years, Agamemnon led the Achaeans in their battle against the Trojans before the unyielding walls of Troy. Despite the many adversities he faced, he ultimately secured victory, leading to Troy's downfall. Among the spoils of war, the great Basilius claimed some of the most prized treasures, including Cassandra, the stunning princess and prophetess, daughter of King Priam. So enchanting was Cassandra's beauty that even the god Apollo fell in love with her. Agamemnon declared that she would become his slave and accompany him to Mycenae. In response, Cassandra warned him that if he knew what awaited him at home, he would never set foot in Greece again. Although Cassandra's prophetic visions were genuine, Apollo, angered by her rejection of his love, had cursed her so that no one would believe her words. Unaware of her warnings, Agamemnon remained oblivious to the fact that his wife, Clytemnestra, ruled in Mycenae alongside her lover, Aegisthus. The queen harbored a profound hatred for Agamemnon, as he had sacrificed their daughter, Iphigenia, to ensure the Greek fleet could sail to Troy. Her grief and fury over the loss of her beloved daughter left her incapable of forgiving him. When Agamemnon's ships, laden with treasures, approached Greece, it seemed he would be the only Greek leader to return home unscathed. Yet, as his fleet neared the Peloponnese, a violent storm arose. Agamemnon questioned the gods, asking why they would punish him after he had fulfilled their commands throughout the decade-long war. Cassandra, however, revealed that the gods were not punishing him, though her prophecy, as always, fell on deaf ears. The gods, in truth, sought to save Agamemnon from the tragic fate awaiting him in Mycenae. Yet, he dismissed Cassandra's warnings, claiming her beautiful words were mere folly. Confident in his destiny as the triumphant conqueror of Troy, Agamemnon believed his return to Mycenae would mark the pinnacle of his glory. Meanwhile, news of his homecoming reached the Mycenaean palace, where Aegisthus and Clytemnestra conspired to eliminate him before he could reclaim the throne. Agamemnon's children, Electra and Orestes, were already aware of their mother's affair with Aegisthus, the kingdom's acting regent. Agamemnon's arrival in Mycenae was met with great celebration, the people hailing him as if he were a reincarnated Hercules. Passing through the iconic Lion Gate, he brought with him an array of treasures looted from Troy. Clytemnestra feigned joy, kneeling at her husband's feet and thanking the gods for his glorious return, all the while masking her treacherous intentions. However, her simmering resentment surged upon seeing the radiant Cassandra in Agamemnon's entourage. Remembering the bitter words of Polymedes' father, who lamented that the Achaean leaders had turned their slaves into their wives, Clytemnestra's hatred solidified. Agamemnon, oblivious to the brewing danger, expressed gratitude to Aegisthus for maintaining order in his kingdom during his absence, believing the feud between their families had finally been resolved. He embraced Orestes and Electra, who had been mere children when he departed for Troy, and told Clytemnestra how deeply he had missed her. He longed for rest and affection, but decided to bathe before retiring. The king, weary from a decade of war, let his guard down as he soaked in his bath. At that moment, Aegisthus cast a net over him, catching him by surprise. Helpless, Agamemnon was viciously attacked by both Aegisthus and Clytemnestra. Together, they beat him to death, bringing the life of the great Greek king to a violent and ignoble end. Since Clytemnestra was jealous of the young woman, she killed the slave Cassandra with 2 axe blows when she ran to see what was happening. The story of Basilius Agamemnon had come to a dreadful end, like many other descendants of Tantalus, but the fate of the children Electra and Orestes was still unknown. Aegisthus and Clytemnestra reigned supreme over Mycenae after Agamemnon's death, the great hero who led the Greeks to Troy. The slain king's supporters had already been silenced, for Aegisthus, during Agamemnon's absence, had placed men of his trust in the most important government positions. With the queen's support, he usurped the Mycenaean throne. But Aegisthus still had a matter to settle. Orestes, a 12-year-old child, he was Agamemnon's legitimate heir and would become a future contender for the throne. But Aegisthus did not want to kill the child immediately, for he knew what Clytemnestra was capable of, and he feared he would have the same fate as Agamemnon. But Electra overheard Aegisthus plotting with one of the minions on how to get rid of Orestes, making it all look like a mere accident. During the night, Electra executed a plan to deliver her brother from a terrible fate. They ran away so as not to be seen by the palace guards. She led him to a knight who was a loyal servant of Agamemnon, who would take the boy away from Aegisthus. Before leaving, Electra made Orestes swear that, as soon as he became an adult, he would return to take revenge on his father's murderers. And he did. Orestes was taken to Phocis, where the court of King Strophius, the boy's uncle, was located. The king raised Orestes as a son and prepared him to accomplish what he most desired, to avenge his father's death. Many years passed, and Electra prayed in Apollo's temple at Delphi that her brother would return and bring with him the god's vengeance. She could no longer bear to live under the rule of Aegisthus, who prevented her from marrying, lest she beget another heir to Agamemnon. On leaving the temple, she was approached by 3 young men who said they had news of Orestes, the brother she had not seen for years. Electra turned to Electra rushed into the palace of Mycenae, collapsing in her mother's arms with tears streaming down her face. She brought devastating news. Orestes had died in a tragic chariot accident during the Olympic Games. His friends were on their way to return his body so that it could be given the honorable funeral rites befitting a prince. Clytemnestra seemed torn by the news of her son's death. While grief was evident, there was also a hint of relief, as Orestes' demise would ensure the kingdom's peace by removing any threat to Aegisthus' position. Electra informed Aegisthus of the impending arrival of Orestes' body. For the first time, he remarked that she had spoken something pleasant to him. Eager to confirm the news, Aegisthus hurried to inspect the body. However, when he lifted the sheet covering it, he was met with a shocking sight. It was Clytemnestra's corpse, her abdomen pierced with sword wounds. Before Aegisthus could react, Orestes emerged and drove a sword through the usurper's chest, finally exacting revenge for the murder of his father and the theft of his throne. The tale of the prince of Mycenae, who avenged his father by killing both his mother and her lover, quickly spread across Greece. Reactions were mixed. While many admired his bravery and loyalty to his father, others viewed his act of matricide as deeply cursed. Orestes' actions, though righteous in the eyes of some, would subject him to an ordeal as terrible as the revenge he had carried out. To avenge the murder of his father, the great Agamemnon, he had become the executioner of his own mother, and her and Aegisthus' blood stained his hands. 3 sinister figures appeared behind Orestes. They were the Erinyes, also known as Furies, entities that punished the murderers of kin. The Furies were 3 Tisiphone, the punishment, Megara, the grudge, and Alecto, the unnamed. They were goddesses of vengeance and had the underworld as their residence, where they spent their days punishing criminals. Orestes grew tormented by the Furies. Driven into a state of madness by the Erinyes, he fled Mycenae to the oracle at Delphi, seeking the help of the gods. Orestes had only the support of Pallades, prince of Phocis, who grew up beside Zeredes while he was in exile, and to whom he promised the hand of Electra. Pallades, as a loyal friend, stood by Orestes in the most difficult periods. At the oracle of Delphi, facing the statue of the god Apollo, Orestes asked the shining deity for help. He considered the punishment unfair and that his hands were not stained by the blood of innocents. Apollo appeared and said he would be by his side. Orestes had visited the oracle of Delphi as a teenager, being ordered to avenge the death of his father, cowardly murdered by his wife and lover. Apollo ordered Orestes to visit the city of Athens and the temple of its patron goddess, where he would find a courtroom set up to pass judgment. and Orestes set off with his friend toward Athens. The way to Attica was difficult. Orestes was still being persecuted by the Furies. In the face of such suffering, Apollo began to protect the prince of Mycenae, keeping the furious entities away. Orestes and Pylades finally reached their destination, the temple of the goddess Athena. Orestes knelt in front of the goddess's statue, saying that he was there at the behest of Apollo, the deity who had told him that Athena would provide a fair trial. Meanwhile, one of the Furies stated that, if justice was done, he would suffer eternally in Tartarus. Athena appeared and said that she would preside over Orestes' trial. The Aryanes would be the accusers and Orestes would have the right to a thorough defense. Outside the city of Athens, on Mount Ares, the trial took place before the Athenian populace. Orestes had the god Apollo as his defense attorney, while the Aryanes hurled terrible words against the Mycenaean prince. The leader of the Aryans took the floor and opened the accusation, saying that the case was simple. Orestes had confessed to the crime of matricide. With his own hands, he had killed the mother who had always loved him. The law of gods and men was clear on the heinous crime. Apollo took the floor and said that Orestes had killed his mother, but Clytemnestra was not innocent. She and her lover Aegisthus had partaken in the murder of the lofty Agamemnon, the man who restored the honor of all Greeks by punishing the Trojans. The god asserted that the act had not been thoughtless. The prince had second thoughts and queried the oracle at Delphi, where he was told that he would have to punish the murderers. And in doing so, Orestes proved to be deeply God-fearing. The jurors seemed divided as to Orestes' verdict. When the votes were counted, the result was a tie. Athena stood up and said, as president of the trial, she would split the vote. The goddess asserted that she had listened carefully to the defense and the prosecution. When Orestes struck down Queen Clytemnestra, he believed he was not killing his mother, but avenging his father's murder. For this reason, he was declared acquitted of the charge of unjustified murder. Overwhelmed with relief, Orestes fell to his knees, free at last from the burden of committing one of humanity's gravest sins. The Aryanes, the ancient deities of vengeance, cried out in fury, accusing the new gods of discarding the age-old traditions they had upheld for millennia. Orestes expressed his gratitude to the people of Athens for their commitment to justice. He vowed that, from that day forward, the people of Mycenae would never wage war against the people of Attica as long as he lived. Furthermore, he declared that any successor who broke this promise would be cursed. With this declaration, Orestes and his loyal friend Pylades departed from Athens. To appease the enraged goddess of vengeance, Athena decreed that a temple be constructed in honor of the Aryanes, where they would be revered as enforcers of divine justice. This act symbolized the reconciliation between the old and new gods and ensured the continued balance of justice in the land.